Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, there's this very specific fantasy I think a lot of us have buried somewhere deep down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It is that whole, I'm going to quit my soul-sucking job, move out to a cabin in the woods somewhere, write a brilliant novel, and just become an instant millionaire fantasy. We really tend to view the publishing industry as this ultimate meritocracy. Like if you just write something beautiful enough, the world will inevitably reward you with validation and fame and, a very comfortable bank account.
Right. It is the J.K. Rowling lottery ticket dream. We all just want to believe that talent is the only currency that matters. But today, well, we are going to take that fantasy, douse it in gasoline, and light a match.
We really are. We're digging into a stack of sources today centered around the book Read Between the Lies by Jesse Q Sutanto. And on the surface, this is a psychological thriller about a struggling writer who gets obsessed with her rival. But if you look at the industry notes, the character studies, and the satirical elements we have pulled for this deep dive, it is actually a brutal case study. It looks at modern envy, the poverty of comparison, and really the dark side of living your dream.
It is a fascinating and honestly quite uncomfortable look at what happens when your self-worth is entirely tied to an industry that is, frankly, arbitrary, capitalist, and often incredibly cruel. We are going to be unpacking the layers of the unreliable narrator, examining the strict hierarchy of the publishing world, and analyzing how past trauma can twist a person's perception of reality, onto the point where they become the very villain they think they are fighting.
So let us set the stage here. Our hero, and I use that term very loosely today, is Fern Huang. When we meet Fern, she is living in New York City. And usually, when you hear protagonist in NYC, you picture Carrie Bradshaw, right? Like brunches, shoes, this effortless career.
Yeah, Fern is living the anti-Carrie Bradshaw life. She is the definition of the struggling artist, but without any of the romantic filter. She works as an assistant to a pre-wedding photographer named Annette. And the source material goes into painful, excruciating detail about just how demoralizing this job is. It is not just that the work is hard, it is that she is entirely invisible.
There's a specific phrase she uses to describe herself that really stuck with me. She calls herself nature's prey.
Wow. Yeah, that phrase does a massive amount of heavy lifting. Think about the psychology of someone who wakes up every single morning believing they're at the absolute bottom of the food chain.
It implies she lives in a state of constant threat.
Exactly. She is fetching coffee, she is carrying these heavy equipment bags until her shoulders literally bruise, and she describes herself as scampering out of photos like a hamster so the beautiful people can have their moment.
It is just so dehumanizing. Annette, her boss, does not even speak to her in full sentences. It just barks and commands. Coffee ETA, move the bag. Food is basically treated like furniture that occasionally makes mistakes.
And this is crucial for understanding what happens later on. Fern is not just kind of sad, she is being actively erased by her daily life. She has no support system at all.
Right, her parents are real estate agents who just do not get it.
Right, they ask her why she cannot just go out and find an agent the way they find houses. She has no partner, she has no real-life friends. Her only friend is her sourdough starter, which she named Dolores.
Okay, I have to admit I laughed at Dolores, but it is also deeply tragic. It really highlights how isolated she is. But here's the thing I found super interesting in the notes. Fern fights this feeling of worthlessness with what I would call aggressive niceness. She bakes these elaborate sourdough creations like cookies and muffins and breads, and she gives them to everyone. She gives them to her neighbors. She brings them to Annette.
This is where we really have to put on our psychologist hats for a minute. On the surface, Fern looks like the quote-unquote good person. She is the neighbor you and I would all want to have. But look closer at the internal monologue provided in the text.
Right. It is so different from her actions.
Exactly. She hands a cookie to her neighbor Terry, but in her head, she is harshly critiquing his loud music, calling him annoying, and judging his entire lifestyle. She is nice to Annette's face, bringing her these treats, but internally, she despises her.
So it is essentially transactional kindness.
That is exactly what it is. It is a transaction. She is not baking because she loves Terry or Annette. She is baking to buy the right to say, I am a good person. It is a shield for her. She thinks, I cannot be a loser. Look how nice I am. Look how much I give to people. She believes the universe fundamentally owes her a debt. She is putting coins into the karma vending machine, just waiting for the payout.
She is trying to bargain with the universe. I suffered, I baked the cookies, I took the abuse, now give me the reward. And for Fern, that ultimate reward is a book deal. She believes publishing a book will finally fix this black hole inside her.
And then It actually happens. The call, the moment every writer dreams of. Her agent, Poppy, calls her up while she's literally hiding in the bathroom at work.
This scene is so visceral. Fern is shaking, she is crying, she's hyperventilating. Poppy tells her that Harvest Press wants to buy her book.
Now, Harvest Press is described in the text as a mid-sized publisher. They are respectable, sure, but they are not one of the big five giants. And Poppy gives her the numbers. And this is where we really need to stop and talk about the economics of publishing, because the text gives us a very specific number that changes the entire context of the story.
Okay, hit us with the math.
The offer is $16,000.
Okay, now for you listening at home, $16,000 might sound like a pretty nice chunk of change. Like, hey, I can buy a decent used car or pay off some credit cards. But we are talking about a book deal here.
Right, and it is $16,000 for 2 books. That is $8,000 per book. And we have to break down how that actually pays out, because I think there is a massive misconception out there that being a published author equals being wealthy.
Right, because Fern does not just get a check for $16,000 the very next day.
Not even close. In traditional publishing, that advance is usually split into payouts. Often it is thirds or quarters. Let us say it is thirds for this example. You get 1 payment on signing the contract, 1 on delivery of the final manuscript, and 1 on actual publication. So take that $8,000 per book. Split it into 3. That is about $2,600 per check.
Oh, ouch.
But wait, there's more. Her agent, Poppy, takes a standard 15% commission. So now we are down to about $2,200. Then you have to set aside money for taxes, because as an author, you are a freelancer. So maybe Fern actually sees $1,500 hitting her bank account. And that payment might be the absolute only money she sees for an entire year.
That is poverty wages. That is not quit your job at the photography studio money. That is barely pay 1 month of New York City rent money.
Exactly. Objectively, financially speaking, this deal changes absolutely nothing about her living situation. She is still poor. She's still stuck with a net. But, and this is the key insight here, Fern is ecstatic. She frames this offer as really strong. She actually thinks she has clawed her way back to the surface.
Because for Fern, it's not actually about the cash at all.
Yeah.
It is about the status. She is anchored to the bottom, so floating even an inch feels like flying to her. She thinks, I am an author now. I matter. I am valid.
She envisions this new identity protecting her. She thinks the label of published author is a literal suit of armor that will stop all the pain. But the problem with anchoring your entire self-worth to external validation is that there is always, always someone with more validation.
And that leads us perfectly to the antagonist, the narrative foil, the woman who has everything Fern wants and more. Enter Haven Lee.
Just the name alone triggers a physical reaction in Fern. Haven Lee.
So who exactly is Haven Lee?
In the present day, Haven is a massive food influencer. She is described as sunshine personified. She has over 1 million followers on Instagram. She posts these gorgeous pictures of her perfect husband, her perfect kids, her perfect sourdough, which, by the way, Fern judges incredibly harshly because Haven uses commercial yeast, not a real starter like Dolores.
Oh, of course she does. Even the yeast is a competition.
Everything is a competition with Fern. But the real issue is their shared history. To Fern, Haven is not just some annoying influencer. She is a monster, a beautiful monster. We get these flashbacks to their childhood that paint a truly horrifying picture.
The cinnamon roll incident, I have to say, reading that scene on the source material, my stomach actually turned. It is so petty and yet so deeply destructive.
Set the scene for us. What happens?
Okay, so Fern is 15 years old. She has spent all night making these elaborate apple maple cinnamon rolls for a bake sale. She's incredibly proud of them. She is walking down the hall at school and she runs into Haven.
And according to Fern's memory, Haven does not just accidentally bump into her. She knocks the entire tray out of Fern's hands. And then, and this is the detail that really matters, she steps on them. She intentionally crushes the pastries right into the floor.
It is such a violent image.
Yeah.
Just stomping on someone's hard work like that.
And then, right when their mutual friend Donnie walks up to see what happened, Haven immediately bursts into tears and claims Fern pushed her. She plays the victim perfectly. She gaslights everyone in the hallway.
And it actually works.
Yeah.
Donnie believes Haven.
Yeah.
And that betrayal is the core wound for Fern. Donnie was her best friend, really her only ally in the world. Haven stole Donnie away, completely isolated Fern, and eventually, tragically, Donnie died. The text implies it was suicide or a death related to severe mental health struggles, and Fern lays the blame for that entirely at Haven's feet.
So you have to understand, Fern is not just jealous of a stranger on the internet. She is watching her abuser, the person she fundamentally believes ruined her life and killed her best friend, get actively rewarded by the universe. She is watching the bad guy win.
Yeah. And win big. Because Fern is doom scrolling Twitter one day, eating a peanut butter sandwich, feeling pretty good about her $16,000 deal. And then she sees the announcement, Haven Lee has a book deal too.
And we need to go back to the industry analysis here, because the difference between Fern's deal and Haven's deal is basically the difference between a tricycle and a rocket ship.
Fern got a nice, quiet offer. What did Haven get?
Haven got a 9-house auction.
Break that down for us. What does that actually mean?
So Fern got what is called a preempt or a single offer. One publisher said, we will take it, and that was it. It is a very quiet process. An auction happens when multiple publishing houses are fighting over the same book. Editors are actively bidding against each other, driving the price up and up. It means the industry is absolutely obsessed with the book before it is even bought.
And the result of that specific auction?
A 7-figure deal. That means at least $1 million.
$1 million versus Fern's $16,000.
And it does not even stop there. The film rights sold to Sony, foreign rights sold to practically every major country on the map. Germany, Brazil, France, you name it.
So purely from an industry standpoint, Haven is what they call a lead title.
Correct. In publishing, there is a very rigid class system. A lead title is the horse the publisher is betting their entire year on. They get the massive marketing budget, the table right at the front of the bookstore, the billboard in Times Square. Fern, on the other hand, is mid-list. She is there to fill out the catalog. The publisher hopes she does well, sure, but they are not banking on it. They are certainly not going to put her face on a bus.
That contrast is just devastating. Fern is reading this news on her phone, and the text describes her physically rejecting it. She actually chokes on her peanut butter sandwich.
She literally cannot swallow Haven's success. She has to slam herself against the kitchen counter just to dislodge the food. It is a moment of near death caused by pure shock and envy.
In the book Haven wrote, it is called She Asked For It. It is pitched as you meets #MeToo. It is high concept. It is buzzy. Fern wrote a quiet literary novel about sisters. Haven wrote a massive commercial blockbuster.
This completely reinforces Fern's worldview that the world is fundamentally unfair. Bad people win because they are shiny and loud. Good people, like Fern, just get the scraps.
So now, they are both debuting in the exact same year, the class of 2020. And this brings us to the battlefield where most of the present-day conflict takes place, the debut author groups.
These groups are fascinating social experiments all on their own. In the book, it starts as a private group on Facebook and then moves over to Slack. It is supposed to be this wonderful safe space for authors to support each other through the publishing journey.
But looking at the messages we have in the source text, it feels way more like a pressure cooker. It is that classic, fake, nice culture.
It is entirely performative positivity. Lots of exclamation points. We are all in this together. Community over competition. Fern clings to this environment. She feels she finally belongs somewhere. She joins a little clique with 2 other authors, Lisa and Jenna, and they basically bond over being the underdogs.
Lisa and Jenna, they really feed into Fern's absolute worst impulses, do they not?
They are massive enablers. They bond over their shared trauma. They bond over feeling like the industry does not appreciate them enough. It becomes this toxic echo chamber of grievance. And Fern feels incredibly safe there right up until Haven joins.
And of course, Haven does not just apply and get in like a normal person.
No, she gets invited. Another author in the group, Felicity, vouches for her, publicly calling her the nicest person ever.
That specific phrase triggers Fern so hard. She immediately remembers the throat-slitting gesture Haven made at prom. She remembers the crushed cinnamon rolls. And now people are calling this woman the nicest person ever.
Fern naturally assumes it is a mask. She thinks she fooled them, but she cannot fool me. Fern is terrified. She thinks Haven is joining the group specifically to hunt her down. She thinks Haven is going to turn the entire group against her just like she did in high school.
But does she actually do that?
That is the big twist of the book. Haven enters the group, and she is helpful. She's charming. She answers people's questions. She uses these self-deprecating hashtags like hashtag the emotional maturity of a toddler.
Fake nice Haven, as Fern calls her.
Exactly. Fern frames every single nice thing Haven does as a calculated manipulation. And this is where we really start to see Fern descend. She decides she needs to be proactive. She needs to protect the other authors from Haven.
This is where it gets really dark. Let us talk about the incident with Yuna, because up until this exact point, you can sort of sympathize with Fern. She is traumatized, she is poor, she is struggling, but here she completely crosses a line.
The Yuna incident is absolutely pivotal. Yuna is another author in the debut group, and she is very anxious. She posts a question in the Slack channel because she has not received her edit letter from her editor in 3 months. She is panicking.
Which is a really long time when you were waiting for news.
It is a long time. Haven jumps in to reply in the main chat. She suggests Yuna should just nudge her agent. She says that is what agents are for, and it will not hurt to just check in.
Which sounds completely reasonable, right?
Objectively. It is standard, completely professional advice. It is exactly what Yuna should do in that situation. But Fern sees malice. Fern analyzes that message and decides that Haven is actively trying to sabotage Yuna. She thinks Haven wants Yuna to bother her agent so that Yuna gets labeled a difficult client.
That is such a massive leap of logic.
It is pure projection. Fern is paranoid, so she assumes everyone else is secretly plotting too. So what does Fern actually do? She slides into Yuna's DMs. She privately messages her. She warns Yuna not to listen to Haven. She tells Yuna that Haven does not have her best interests at heart. She creates this whole conspiracy theory that Haven is jealous of Yuna because they happen to be at the same literary agency.
Which is wild, because Haven has $1 million deal and Yuna does not. Why on earth would Haven be jealous?
Exactly. It makes no sense. But Fern spins this narrative anyway, and Yuna believes her. Yuna is terrified. She thanks Fern for saving her. Fern walks away from that interaction feeling like an absolute hero. She thinks, I stood up to the bully. But in reality, she just manipulated Yuna into distrusting a colleague and isolating herself.
It is weaponized to empathy. She's using caring as a way to isolate Haven. She is intentionally praising the well.
And she frames it as empathy to herself. She tells herself, I save Yuna. But in reality, she manipulated Yuna. Fern is replicating the exact same exclusion tactics she claims Haven used on her in high school. She is actively creating an us versus her dynamic.
It happens again with the book title incident. This one makes me cringe every single time I read the notes. It is so incredibly awkward.
Oh God, the book title. Kristen.
Right, so Kristen complains to the group that her editor wants to change her title. Her original title was You Are Mine for Good. The new title is For Better or Worse.
Now, Fern and her little clique, Lisa and Jenna, start mocking the original title in their private chat. They think it sounds like a creepy stalker thriller. You Are Mine for Good.
Which, to be fair, it really does sound a bit creepy.
Sure it does. So Fern, trying to be supportive in the main chat, posts a comment saying, I love the new title. It is so ominous. I know it is going to be a super suspenseful thriller.
She genuinely thinks she is being nice. She thinks she is just joining the conversation.
But then Kristen replies, it is not a suspense. It is a romance novel.
Oh no, that is painful.
The silence in that chat room must have been absolutely deafening. Fern has just publicly implied that the author's original title sounded like a horror movie when it was actually supposed to be a sweet love story. It is humiliating. Fern has completely misread the room.
And who swoops in to save the day?
Haven. Haven replies to the thread and says, actually, I think For Better or Worse works beautifully for a romance. I can totally see it with gorgeous flowers on the cover. She validates Kristen, she diffuses the awkwardness, and she looks incredibly gracious doing it.
And Fern hates her for it.
She hates her because Haven's competence highlights Fern's incompetence. Fern projects malice onto Haven's kindness because if Haven is actually a nice person, then Fern's entire worldview, the idea that she is the victim and Haven is the monster, completely collapses.
So Fern actually needs Haven to be a villain more than she needs to be successful herself.
Exactly. She is addicted to the rivalry. She spends way more time refreshing Haven's Goodreads page than she does writing her next book.
Oh, let us talk about the Goodreads obsession, because that is a very specific circle of hell for authors.
It truly is. The text shows Fern compulsively checking the site. She looks up Haven's book. She asked for it. Even before the book is officially out, it already has rave reviews. People saying, you must buy this book. It will change your life.
And Fern calls these reviewers losers in her head. But she is absolutely desperate for that exact same validation. She looks up her own book, and it is just empty. There's no cover, there are no ratings. It's just a blank space.
It is a perfect mirror of her internal state. Haven is full, Fern is empty. And Haven, very cleverly, mentions in the chat that she actually blocks Goodreads on her browser. She actively protects her mental health. She says, I have the emotional maturity of a toddler, so I just do not look.
Which is funny and very self-deprecating.
It is charming. But Fern interprets it as a humble brag. She thinks Haven is rubbing it in her face. Fern literally cannot accept that Haven might just be well-adjusted, or at least smart about managing her public image.
And amidst all this online drama, the reality of the actual work eventually crashes in. Fern gets her edit letter.
The dreaded edit letter. Fern has been judging Una for not having hers yet. She's been judging everyone. Then hers finally arrives from her editor, Lindsay.
And it is not good news.
It is 12 pages long, and it is not just minor tweaks. Lindsay wants a total rewrite. She wants to cut the entire first 4 chapters. She wants to change the second half entirely. She even questions the core genre of the book.
Is a 12-page letter normal in publishing?
It definitely can be. Books are rewritten from scratch all the time. But for a debut author who secretly thinks she is a genius and who is already feeling wildly insecure, it feels like a slap in the face. The editor is basically saying, the book you sold us is not working at all.
Fern feels tricked. She thinks, why did you buy the book if you just wanted to change it?
She feels like the goalposts have been moved on her. But contrast this with Haven. Haven casually mentions in the chat that her editor got it immediately. Just minor tweaks. A super easy process.
The universe strikes again.
But notice Fern's reaction to the letter. She does not roll up her sleeves. She does not call her agent to strategize a revision plan. She spirals. She runs straight to her clique, Lisa and Jenna, and just complains. And they give her terrible advice.
Right. They tell her it is a shitty letter and she should complain to her agent.
Which is the absolute worst thing she could possibly do. If Fern emails Poppy complaining about a completely standard edit letter, Poppy is going to think Fern is a difficult client. But Fern is listening to them because they are her friends. They are constantly validating her victimhood.
It really highlights how the industry pits these authors against each other. It is a zero-sum game in their heads. If Haven shines, Fern stays in the dark.
And the digital aspect of it just amplifies everything. The fake, nice culture of the Slack group completely masks the fact that there are competitors fighting for the exact same limited shelf space in a bookstore.
So we have to ask the really big question here, the unreliable narrator question. Who is the real bully in this story?
It is the central question of the deep dive. And the text gives us a very complex, messy answer.
All right, if you strip away Fern's internal monologue, all the stuff about her trauma and her sadness and the sourdough starter, and you just look at her raw actions, what do you actually see?
You see someone who creates a secret exclusionist chat room. You see someone who openly mocks other authors' titles. You see someone who sends private messages to manipulate people against a colleague. You see someone who is actively sabotaging the community she claims to love so much.
Wow. When you lay it out like that, Fern is doing all the things she accuses Haven of doing.
Exactly. It is pure projection. Fern believes she is the good person fighting a monster, but her actions are genuinely monstrous. She justifies them as protection or justice, but the end result is pure toxicity.
But we cannot just ignore the trauma, right? The cinnamon rolls, the throat-slitting gesture at prom.
Yeah.
If those things really happen, does it not explain Fern's behavior?
It explains it, sure, but does it justify it? And also, we have to ask, did those things happen exactly the way Fern remembers them? Memory is incredibly malleable. Trauma can severely distort your reality. We know Fern feels invisible all the time. Maybe the accident with the cinnamon rolls was truly an accident, but Fern's deep insecurity made it feel like a targeted, violent attack.
Or maybe Haven really was a mean girl in high school. But people grow up.
That is the other strong possibility. Maybe Haven was an absolute nightmare at 15, but at 25, she seems completely professional. She's writing a book about the Me Too movement and standing up for yourself. She is building a massive career. Fern is the one stuck in high school. Fern is the one actively keeping the feud alive.
Fern is basically haunting herself.
Yes, she claims to be healed, but she defines her entire existence by her relation to Haven.
So let us zoom out a bit and look at the broader themes here. One is definitely the toxicity of community.
The internet era of writing, the writing community hashtag on Twitter, the debut Slack groups, it sells this lovely idea that we are all friends holding hands in a circle. But it is a brutally competitive industry. If Haven gets the lead title slot, Fern does not. There is only so much money to go around.
And being in a chat room with the person who got the $1 million deal while you are struggling to pay your rent is not a safe space. That is a pressure cooker.
It breeds intense comparison. And as the old saying goes, comparison is the thief of joy. Fern cannot even enjoy her $16,000 deal, which is a real accomplishment because she is just staring at Haven's millions.
It is also a really sharp satire of the publishing industry itself, just the arbitrary nature of it all.
The hurry up and wait of it all. The fact that the size of your deal determines how you are treated as a human being. The utter obsession with announcements. Fern spends hours replying to tweets about her deal announcement, just addicted to the dopamine of the notifications, instead of actually working on her craft.
It is the good person paradox all over again. Fern thinks that if she performs goodness, baking cookies, replying to every tweet, she will be rewarded. But the industry rewards, well, what does it actually reward?
It rewards marketability, hooky concepts. You meets #MeToo. Haven wrote a book that sells easily. Fern wrote a quiet book about feelings. The market, frankly, does not care about who is a nicer person.
That is a very hard pill to swallow.
It is, and Fern is choking on it, much like that peanut butter sandwich.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on the clique dynamics again. Lisa and Jenna, are they real friends to Fern?
They are enablers, pure and simple. They validate her worst impulses constantly. When Fern makes that awful mistake with the book title, Lisa says, "We need to fix this," and they actively conspire to cover it up. They are not challenging Fern to be a better person or a better writer. They are just joining her in the mud. It feels like high school all over again, just with a different set of players.
Is like Fern recreated the exact same dynamic she hated, just so she could finally be on the inside this time.
Precisely. She became the exclusionary force she always feared.
So what does this all mean for us? For you, the listener?
I think it is a massive warning about the stories we tell ourselves. We all think we're the protagonist of our own lives. We all think we are the good person. But are we really? If someone read a transcript of our private texts or saw our search history, would we still look like the hero?
That is a terrifying thought.
And it asks us to examine our own villains. Is that person at work really out to get you, or are you just projecting your own deep insecurities onto them? Is your enemy actually just living their life and you are the one who is obsessed?
Fern Wong is a character who is utterly convinced of her own virtue while committing highly questionable acts. It is a fascinating, dark, and very uncomfortable mirror to look into.
And Read Between the Lies forces us to look into that mirror. It is not just a thriller. It is a brilliant character study of what happens when you let envy drive the car.
Well, on that cheerful note, this has been a deep dive into the messy, envy-fueled world of publishing.
A good reminder to just focus on your own page, not someone else's.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you in the next deep dive.